I'm tired.
Hello, everyone. You are listening to the Late Morning Program with Namras, the #1 Hare Krishna podcast in the world. I'm here with my friend Manjari. Hey, Manjari, how's it going?
Hey, good. Thank you. How are you? Thanks for having me.
Yeah. I'm excited about this conversation. So today we're discussing transcendental junk food, our relationship with prasadam. So this is a really cool topic, and I love the title. And I have like a bunch of questions about that. But let's start out with your personal journey in spirituality and Krishna consciousness. So tell us a little bit about your upbringing and how you kind of got involved with I know you have an Instagram page and it's very successful and you put out a lot of content. So tell us a little bit about the beginning of all that, like from the very beginning.
I think for children who are born and raised in the movement, that's quite a boring story, actually. It's probably quite similar to yours. I think it's really, in previous podcasts that I've listened to yours, but like people who have these like really rich, like I found Krishna in the library where this Bhagavad Gita was like thrown behind this bookshelf or something, is always really inspiring. I've taken Krishna for granted for a lot of my life because he's just been there since I was born.
Yeah. Your parents were devotees and everything.
Yeah. But I was born and raised in Calgary, Alberta, which is kind of the Texas of Canada. So sorry any of the Albertans who are offended by that. But born and raised there. Most of my family is actually still there. A Gujarati family, Patel. Of course, there's a little tiny center there that really molded me in so many different ways as to what I've become now and why I'm so passionate about sharing. And my nutrition journey started a little bit later in life, but something that I was exposed to from a really young age was actually just hospitality. My parents were sort of the prime hosts of all the sannyasis and visiting guests.
Oh, right.
And my parents are, pujaris at the local temple. We are very, very involved, especially in food preparation.
Right.
And I think what really connected me was this idea of kinship. I really like and love Sunday Feast. This idea that we're getting together and breaking bread and just, it's the only real time in the whole process where we are connecting in a way that feels, to me, very intimate. That, whether I'm serving prasad or eating prasad, where I can feel, I'm smiling at a person, I'm asking them how they are, we're connecting to each other. And there's something really beautiful that is presented through food. And that was my real, I think, what is the correct word? I think that was my real push into, connecting to Krishna in that way.
That's what interested you, like later on, is the whole, like, your upbringing in the Sunday Feast, that kind of, and that kinship and that kind of the hospitality thing. That's what, like right now, that's what you're kind of doing with your, your content that you put out, and also with Kirtan Vancouver and things like that.
Yeah. So a big part of why I started Made by Manjari, if those of you don't know, that's my handle, was that I had a very unique experience of growing up in the movement. My parents really pushed my sister and I to, pick up all the ideal things of like learning harmonium, mridanga, kirtal, all of these things that my sister really mastered. I not so much. And yeah, I've never really had an interest, to be honest. While she was at lessons, I would somehow end up in the kitchen. And
Wow.
a very exciting thing for me was to come home after school or to be at the temple and to see these group of women gathered together making samosas or kachoris. Or I learned so much just through viewing.
Right.
So I don't really I really like the idea of a recipe, but we can learn so much by just seeing technique and process. And
Right.
historically, that's how things are passed on.
Yeah. Yeah. I like that. I like that. Yeah, I mean, growing up, I never saw my mom use a recipe or any other ladies use recipes, and that always fascinated me how that worked. Like, how do you know which vegetable to put which spices? Like, it's not the same. It's not like broccoli and well, this other vegetable. It's going to be the same thing. I just find that so fascinating that it's like a technique and it's like something that's learned over time, which is really interesting.
Right.
We can get into that after, but
Yes.
tell us a little bit. So you didn't go to, there was no Gurukul there at the time. You just went to public school.
I'm sorry, you're cutting out.
Am I really?
Yeah.
Yikes. Maybe in the comments, am I cutting out for everyone or just for Manjari?
Okay, I think you're okay now.
Really? Okay. Did you hear what I said earlier? No. Okay. What I was saying was, you didn't go to any Gurukul nearby, right? You just went to public school.
No, yeah, I was a public school kid, probably. Actually, the block that I grew up on, there was 5 other Patel families. So from when I was born until when I entered kindergarten, I really had a very skewed idea of, the first time I saw somebody eat meat, I was like 5 or 6 years old. And it was so shocking for me that like people aren't vegetarian.
Right.
And my first experience of that was in elementary school. And it was kind of a difficult assimilation for me. I had a lot of.
Oh, did we lose you?
I think I lost you there for a second.
Yeah, just for a second. You're back.
Okay. Yeah, so elementary school, I feel was actually very challenging for me, and probably my first experience of realizing I didn't fit in was after 9/11. I think a lot of people see the challenges that happened in America, but in Canada, we also faced a lot of racism, a lot of just change in relationship that suddenly I was aware that, I had a color and, things that I didn't really register before that.
And how did that kind of affect you going forward? I mean, that's a difficult thing to realize. I mean, you must have been what, like
I was in grade 6, so.
Oh, you were in grade 6.
Young.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right. Okay. And okay. And then when did you so then after that, did you study nutrition and all that in university, or what did you do after that?
Well, I was told and taught that I should probably head towards some kind of science profession. Around 16 or 17, although my experience of growing up was very fulfilled, I really just didn't feel like Calgary was my place. I think to bridge on that, the industry there is really based on oil and gas.
Right.
Beef is a huge business in Alberta.
Oh, really?
Who live there, they survive off of these kinds of things, and it really started to affect my kind of mental health in some way. And at 17 years old, I was already in university studying like general sciences. And I had just decided that Calgary wasn't the place for me.
Mm-hmm.
So I picked a program, not thinking at all about what my relationship with the program would be, just so I could leave.
Wow.
And I picked
Wait,
a radiation.
you felt that disconnected that you were like, I got to just leave this place.
Yes. Yeah.
Wow.
Also, there was a little bit of, I think, disconnect at the temple for me, where I felt like I really wanted to get involved, but there wasn't really space to do that. And I think this is a difficulty that a lot of young people in the movement have. So it's, again, not a unique experience. I mean, if just a little dip in caveat here, but had I known that this was the truth at all temples, maybe I wouldn't have moved. So
I felt that as well at times, for sure. So sorry to cut you off. Go ahead.
That's okay. So I really felt like I needed to uproot myself, and I didn't tell my parents, but I had applied to 2 universities, one in Toronto and one in Vancouver. And Vancouver had won out after a very long battle with my father, just because it was closer. And the Vancouver and Calgary community is very connected. So there was people here to kind of, I guess, watch over me and take care of me in that sense. And so I applied to a radiation therapy program. And for people who don't know, that's basically to be a radiation tech. Now, if you understand that I'm in nutrition now, it definitely wasn't my calling. And probably halfway through doing all my prerequisites for it, I realized that. And that's around the time that I kind of switched gears and tried to do a little bit of internal investigation. I think living alone and eating what you want, because before that, I was eating what my grandmother made or my mother made. And they have, this ancestral knowledge of nutrition and based very deeply in Ayurveda. I was just at the mercy of basically like all the cereal I wanted to eat without anybody monitoring what I was doing. And it really started to affect my health. And
because you were going to university in Vancouver and you were just living alone as a student.
I enjoy cooking, but who's got the time? Processed food is definitely the easy way out. But it was, and around that age, I was probably about 18. I was diagnosed with polycystic ovarian syndrome. And actually 1 in 8 women in Canada also suffer from polycystic ovaries. And it was a very difficult thing because I didn't really know how to navigate it. And neither did my parents. And so slowly through this investigation, one, I didn't really know where to end up with my education. And so I kind of put that on pause. Ani, as most of you know, and I got married. And it was actually nothing to do with, I was actually sitting at a restaurant, a new restaurant that had opened in Vancouver. And the bowl of food had come in front of me, and it was so fresh and beautifully prepared and naturally sattvic. And I thought, this is real food. Like, this is what food should look like. And I haven't been experiencing this in such a long time. And luckily for me, the server was actually the owner of the restaurant. And we sat and we talked, and she told me that, there's this really amazing nutrition program in Vancouver, and you should just go try being student for a day and see how it feels for you.
Wow.
And so I went and did that, and within 24 hours I was registered, and that was how that journey for me started.
Wow, cool. So let's get into like the topic now, because I think this is really important, and I think we kind of don't discuss this very much, as far as like you were talking about the Sunday feast. Let's start there. The Sunday feast is meant to attract people to come to the temple. Beautiful food, prasadam, sanctified food, and it's cooked generally when in ISKCON in the 70s. It's cooked in ghee. It's very rich. It's very tasty. That's how people joined. Like I mean, we all know that people join from like, oh, I tasted the halava and then I just joined the temple and I shaved up, and that was the end of it.
The most beautiful thing I've ever had in my life.
Right. And I love that part of people joining Krishna consciousness and the temple and things. Fast forward 50 years now, the same devotees who were eating that for years and years and years, they have health issues because of that. So what are your views on the Sunday feast being healthy or being rich and attracting people, but at the same time keeping in mind what's like the health repercussions?
I missed the end of that question, so I'm just gonna
the health repercussions of having. Did you get that?
Yeah.
Okay.
Firstly, I don't want to be disparaging to anyone. I personally really like the idea of Sunday feast, and I know that there's a lot of conversation about it not really serving the purpose that it used to, and I really don't agree with that. I think that we can really get back to what Sunday feast was in a very sustainable way.
Really?
Yeah, first I think that creation of community and kinship is so important, and I think it goes above even the quality of food. Is the fact that actually the Indian government really popularized through one of their campaigns this slogan, which is Atithi Devo Bhava, that our guests are like God. Yes. And I think we've really lost that experience that, a person comes to the temple for the first time and typically they're not really greeted in a nice way, or the person serving prasad isn't being super mindful and
plop it on the plate.
Sometimes it doesn't make it on the plate, Namra. So I'm just
right.
It's rough, and a smile goes a long way, and this idea of sitting with somebody and breaking bread and having an experience that feels fulfilling. I think we've gotten very far away from that, aside from nutrition.
Right. That's a great point. Yeah, aside from nutrition, just the welcoming part of it.
Right. I mean, just it was something that my father used to say to me, especially because we were voluntold basically to serve prasad every Sunday, was that it's not just that we're serving this devotee, it's that Krishna is inside of them. And so we should treat them as such, is that when you're serving this person, you're serving Krishna within this person. This food is sacred and satiating them, but Krishna is also pleased by this. So that's, I think, aside from the nutrition side of things, I think that the service is considered to be very menial. People are quite mean to the cooks. A lot of this is not really in the cook's control. Like, cooking in a commercial kitchen is a talent. It's something that needs to be learned. It's not always easy. I think that's why people are like, oh, well, it's always overcooked, or prasadam can often come out burnt, but it's hard navigating like large pots and large ingredients and kind of taking control in this sense. So to the credit of anybody who takes on this service, because it's genuinely probably one of the hardest things to do is feed a community. So now back to the nutrition side of this. We've had 50 years of experience to see what the effects, especially for full-time devotees eating this prasad every day. It's we can't call it healthy. We can't even market it as healthy, which we have been doing. We can't even market it as Ayurvedic because it's not. It's Vata aggravating, it's Pitta aggravating. It's often quite spicy. It often has a lot of oil. And I'm only speaking to, I think, North America because
Yeah, let's speak from there because that's our experience.
yeah, I think nutrition also varies depending on what region you're in.
Right.
Some of the foods that we've, especially ancestrally grew up eating, are typically easier to digest in India. That's not necessarily true in North America.
Right. Interesting point.
So other things that need to be addressed in Sunday feast. I think the top one is poor food combining. We often have you heard of food combining?
No. Like don't eat watermelon with something else, like kind of
Exactly.
like that.
So we struggle with this as a collective a lot. I struggle with this a lot too, but a typical Sunday feast plate, for example, will have some kind of grain in it. Good, great. It will have halva in it, which is also a grain. People classify it as a dessert, but it's 2 grains. There will be some kind of mixed fruit salad. I just got a plate of prasad from the temple this morning, so I'm just describing what was in it. There was dry fruit, and it was all mixing together.
Yeah.
It's all beautiful. I'm going to eat it.
Yeah.
I only have to do this once a week, right? What to
Right.
speak of a person who has to eat something like that every meal. It's beautiful food, it's blessed, but in Ayurveda, for example, you are not what you are what you eat. We hear this a lot, but you're not. You're what you digest. And if you're not digesting, you're not uptaking the nutrients that you need to sustain yourself. And at the end of the day, if you're not doing that, then how are you serving Srila Prabhupada's movement?
Right. Can I ask you to break down? You said vata. What was the word you used? Enraging, something like that.
Yeah, I think these are the constitutions in Ayurveda. I'm not an Ayurveda specialist.
Right. But tell us a little bit. You were saying that it enrages your vata and your pitta. You said.
Yeah. So
break that down a little bit for me.
Typically, the way that food is processed, it has an effect in your body. Right. Action, reaction. So a lot of the times the prasad that's prepared, it is because our digestion may not be at its peak strength. I mean, I can testify to this. When I was a teenager, I could basically digest anything. As I move into my 30s now, that's not the case. I really have to pick and choose what I digest. So a lot of the times that the foods that are combined together aren't really at the optimum sort of health combinations in terms of Ayurveda. We also struggle in North America with like mixing cuisines and things, for example. And I think that's, upma and pasta salad, they don't really digest well.
Right. So you're saying food combination is a very important thing. So in a Sunday feast, so you're saying would it when you're saying, okay, we have a grain already, we have a rice or we have a chapati, don't give both, or just give one, or skip the halva, or like how do we do that?
Serve it all. I don't think that there's an issue with the actual there's a reason why grains and dal, for example, are served together. And that reason is that to uptake the amino acids that we need to nourish our bodies, we need to combine our foods in the way that grain and lentils, for example, make a good complete protein.
Rice and dal.
So sabji chapati, for example, you're getting the amino acid nutrients that you need that your body can't produce itself. So this combination of food that's been created is it's thousands of years of science. The issue is the combinations of vegetables, the combination of refined fat. We're using a lot of salt, way more salt than we used to eat historically. Way more sugar, processed sugar, that, they weren't really consumed in, Vedic times when we're talking about food in this way.
Yeah.
So our food has changed so drastically. And I think that we need to, as a collective, investigate how we're combining and bringing together, essentially trying to find ingredients that have more integrity.
Right. Yeah. It's right now, the whole popular thing is where we're sourcing the food from and how processed it is and things like
Right.
that. And I think it's definitely a good point that we have to investigate where we're getting it, because mostly it's like whatever's the cheapest out there, whatever, like oil, whatever is the cheapest oil, because you can use so much of it in the temple. So
Right.
you just want to use all that, so like, just a side point about that, what's your view on ghee and oil? Because because from Prabhupada's time, it was always like, okay, we got to use ghee because that's the most opulent and that's healthy. It's good for the joints and all that stuff. But now it seems like the ghee is not exactly the best kind of ghee. And if you want to use oil, even that's even like whatever, canola oil, that's super unhealthy from what I heard. So what do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if we can drop canola oil as a whole, we can move to a healthier oil. It makes you feel sick. I don't know. To speak to ghee, I think just like all of our vegetables and fruits, we need to assess the quality of our milk. And in North America, I know in India this is a little bit different, but we have a classification system of diets. We identify ourselves as vegetarians. In North America, that's not true. When you call yourself a vegetarian, it means you eat fish and eggs.
Oh, really?
So be very careful when you're identifying. As devotees, the classification is lacto-vegetarian, which is I'm a vegetarian that consumes milk, but not the latter things.
Right.
Vegan is no animal products. I'd really love to see our temples move towards a classification that we create for ourselves called ahimsa vegetarian, where if we're looking at the integrity of our fruits and vegetables and grains and everything, why aren't we looking at the integrity of our dairy?
Yeah. Yes, that's a very important point. Also, a point people argue about, because then it's like when you know where you're sourcing it from and it's not the right thing, then you have to go vegan because it's
right.
Because you don't want to be a part of that.
Right.
So
that's true for our household. We majority are a vegan household. If we have and we choose to love Krishna in this way, I totally understand if somebody has a different opinion, and I don't want to. We all pick how we want to serve the Lord, and if that's with dairy, I just invite you to investigate. You might want, and honestly speaking, if we're not going to, as a whole, put our money towards ahimsa dairy, then we're not going to push forward these projects.
Yeah,
it won't succeed. It won't survive.
Mm-hmm. That's really true, and it's definitely something we need to look into, because it's like such a big part of our Krishna conscious presentation is about the food. And if we don't kind of come with the times of where we're getting it from and how healthy it is or how it makes people feel after they eat it, then you're gonna probably do a disservice in a way. Like you'll
Absolutely. I don't feel I guess one of my biggest things about the Sunday Feast presentation is that it's not inclusive. Becoming a mother actually has really opened my eyes about this, is that the prasad is not allergen friendly. Many in North America, many children are born with, allergies because of the pesticide use, just kind of the way that the world is navigating with our food sources now. If we're still cooking with peanuts and peanut oil, we're cutting out a whole demographic of people who should be, made to feel welcome at our temples. So tons of sugar, tons of refined sugar, which a lot of it at least in Canada, one of the main sources of sugar actually has bone char in it. It's not vegetarian.
Right. Yeah.
And yet, one of my biggest pet peeves actually is at temples when they are serving the drink and they're calling it nectar, but it's Minute Maid with sugar added to it, like diluted in it. What are we doing to people?
Right.
Like, at that point, let's just serve water and, it's pure.
Put a little lemon in it and that's it.
Yeah. Call it a day.
Yeah. What about as far, let's look at the nutrition part now, as far as like quantity, because that's something I personally struggle with. Not that I overeat, but I think like, am I supposed to eat more or am I supposed to eat less? So in a nutritional way, this is probably not connected with the Sunday feast or anything like that, but just like personally, how would you, as a nutritionist, instruct someone to instruct someone's quantity of what they eat?
I think that one of the most difficult things about nourishing ourselves is that it's really based on ourselves. You should intuitively listen to your body's cues. If you're halfway through your meal and you're already starting to burp, for example, this is a sign that your body's telling you to stop. I know that there's this internal cue that, there's still half my plate left and I need to finish my plate. And
yes.
Let's start by serving ourselves a little bit less. And if we need more, I think that I'm so happy when my daughter asks me for seconds or, right. I feel very accomplished, but start with less and work your way up. So I think that's a very mindful eating practice that we can all start with at home. And
like, I remember when I was maybe 25 or something, and I could just eat like endlessly, and it was like, and I wouldn't even gain any weight or anything. I wouldn't feel bad. But now, as a 35-year-old, I'm like, I'm starting to be careful. Like, okay, if I overeat, I will literally, I'll be like bedridden. Like, I can't move.
I think one of the biggest symptoms is feeling lethargic and not being, if you're having this huge lunch or something, and then you can't work for the rest of the day or think. One thing is look at the quantity of food. The second is maybe you need to assess what you're having at what time. Typically
when you're
lunch,
eating,
for example, should be your biggest meal. Dinner, a little on the lighter side, breakfast on the lighter side. We've been, especially here, we've been promoted that breakfast should be the biggest and best meal of, but our digestive systems are just waking up just like we are. So if we're going to have this huge meal for breakfast, we don't really have the capability to digest that because our digestive fire isn't at its strongest.
Right. What's the ideal, like when you're talking about like lunch, breakfast, dinner, what's the ideal timings and what are the ideal things to, like, give us examples of what's something good to eat at those specific times?
That's also a very individual based question. Everybody has a different capability of what they can digest, but also what suits their body the best. And I think in time we learn that about ourselves. For me personally, I like to have a very balanced, in the sense that half of my meal is always vegetable based.
Oh, interesting. Okay.
And I like to promote that in just plant diversity. There's like 22,000 edible plants that we're able to tap into and use. That's a lot of
22,000?
food. Yes.
Wow.
That's just what's been archived. And I think as we're going, that's becoming a little less and less. But if you're assessing all your grains, all your lentils, all the beans in your home, and then all the fresh vegetables and fruits that you're buying, are you having a very plant diverse diet? Or are you typically eating the same things all the time?
Mhm.
So I would challenge people to get out there and experience often things that you see in grocery stores, for example, or at the farmers market that you would never typically pick up, but
Yeah.
you don't know until you try. And
Right.
I think that having a plant forward, at least half of the meal to be vegetable based is very good. Fiber is so important. We don't talk about that enough.
Right.
But also to create a diverse menu is giving our body essential bacteria that we need to promote really great digestion. It's helping to address kind of a lot of the disease that we experience, a lot of the inflammation that we're experiencing, and also the vitamins and minerals that we actually need to uptake from our foods. We're lacking in a lot of these nutrients, and the more diversity we can have, the more we can uptake.
Oh my God, there's so much there that I'd like to unpack. Okay, let's start with my question while you were talking was breakfast, like half vegetable. So like corn flakes, there's corn in there, so it's vegetable, right? Like half
Right.
of the. No, I'm joking, but it's like, for example, cereal. Like I eat cereal. Like I've been eating cereal my whole life every morning. So that's not good. Like it's not good for you probably. I mean, I don't drink milk. I eat it with almond milk, but what would you say to someone who's like, I've had this habit my whole life. How could I change it? It's just a part of my routine.
That's okay. If you can digest it, I think that it's fine.
Right.
When you start to develop symptoms from this, I think that that's when we can talk about, can you prevent this or whatever? But if there's a breakfast that's been working for you for 35 years, then, I don't want to, first of all, I don't want to fault cereal. I think that there are some cereals that are better for you than Cheerios and cornflakes.
Right.
But we can always make decisions in our diet that are, something that we enjoy. I think we should really we should enjoy food. If it's not enjoyable, like if we're just trying to fuel ourselves to stay alive, and I know that there's a lot of people who really just like they could care less about what food tastes like and stuff, and it's just to nourish them.
Yeah.
That's fine also, but I like the idea of like celebrating, and there's so much that I really love from my childhood, for example, that just makes me really nostalgic, but
yes,
I can't eat it anymore. Like
right.
I have a problem with gluten, but so much of all the things, my mom was raised in England, for example. I love having scones, but can I really digest that? So that's when we can investigate that. What is the symptom that I'm experiencing, and how can I address that symptom? So if it's changing our grains, for example, for me, for example, that's a very easy way to enjoy the foods that we grew up and have a lot of food nostalgia with, and experience a lot of love from a bowl of cereal, but just make a better choice about what is the quality, what are the ingredients, what am I getting out of it? Maybe I can pair some nuts and seeds with this to just kind of up the nutrient level, and maybe in half an hour from my meal I'll have a piece of fruit, or before my meal, or there are ways to boost the nutrients in this way.
Like I saw on your page one time you made like chapatis or something out of like quinoa or something. So you're preserving the feeling of eating rotelis, but
Yeah.
you're using a kind of grain that's easily digestible and that works with you. So I like that point to try to substitute things that may not be agreeable to you, but substitute them for things that can still continue the experience of that particular food.
Right. I'm really about kind of preserving the ancestral sort of recipes that I got passed down, but I'm not. I think that we can adjust them because that's what's been happening for generations and generations.
Yeah.
But also, especially in North America, we only have one experience of a rotli, for example, and that's wheat.
Right.
That's not true for, historically, depending on what region people were raised in, what kind of wheat, what different types of grains are in season, what we're eating is totally different. So I'd welcome people to try different types of grains and enjoy different types of flavor, even if it just means adding a little bit more to your multi-grain atta that you're typically using, or
Yeah.
Just allowing yourself to kind of not think out of the box, but rather to go back to the roots and see what the ancient grains that have been used for such a long time, because the wheat that we're having now is not the wheat that our ancestors were eating.
Yeah. Yeah. You were talking previously about inflammation. Now, how do you know if something is inflaming you or it's not agreeable to you or not able to digest it?
Okay. I think when we're talking about hearing your body and what intuitively eating is, there's some kind of, you can feel symptoms either in your skin. Acid reflux is a really big thing that we experience when we're not eating well. Inflammation can show up as bloating. People don't talk about this enough, but pay attention to your bowel movements.
Right. It's important.
What is coming out of us is actually telling you a lot of what you're digesting and not digesting, for example, what suits
Right.
your body and doesn't suit your body. Bloating and gas is probably the first indicator, because it's the first thing to show up, I think, after you've had a food,
So
if
it's
it's working for you.
so it's important to understand what you can digest. And for example, if I can digest cereal, then I can just continue eating it.
Right.
And that's okay. Even
Well,
though it's like super processed and it's like, I mean, my wife complains about the almond milk. Like she says, it's not the best thing, it's still processed and it's got chemicals in it and blah, blah. And I'm like, well, what's the alternative? I mean, it's difficult to find
there is
things.
an alternative, though. I think that you can
Right.
always, if you're, I am not a promoter of like refined foods for sure. I think
Right.
that's something that we need to get away from. But there's an opportunity here. If you enjoy cereal, what is the best kind of cereal we can have? If you
Right.
like, if you like oats, let's start to make oats at home, for example. Let's get more involved in trying to do things from scratch and
Right.
not from the box. One of the first things that I learned in nutrition school that really just left this lasting impact on me on when we pick foods is, if man made it, we leave it. If God ate it, we eat it. Like if you don't have to look at a nutrition fact label or read ingredients.
Oh, it looks like we lost Manjari. Let's wait for her to rejoin. But if you have any questions for her, please put them in the comment section. I'll be addressing them at the end. Let's just wait for her to join. I think she had some internet issues. Okay, she's back. Connecting. This is a great discussion. I mean, this is all stuff I'm interested in because I think we all have to focus a lot on what we are eating and stuff. Sorry, you cut out for a minute. So you were talking about if there's no label on it,
Right.
you were saying, so if God made it, eat it. If man made it, leave it.
Yes. And I think that's a good practice for a lot of things is I personally I try to challenge myself to make everything at home.
Yeah.
And if I can't, I look at ingredients and I investigate. If I don't understand an ingredient or if it sounds foreign to me, it's not something I should be eating. A note for your almond milk: assess how much almonds are actually in your almond milk.
Don't tell me that,
If
please.
it's got oil in it, if there's oil in the ingredients, that's
Right.
something that you should
Yeah.
look at. Yeah. This is the thing, is that health is not, it's made individually for every single person. This is something we struggle with in our household for sure. My husband is a chronic snacker, for example. I am not, but a part of marriage, I guess, is the give and take, but also in nutrition is the give and take. I'm not going to strip away something that he enjoys so much and actually thrives off of in some sense. Like, for some people, snacking is incredibly important. If you have diabetes or blood sugar issues, for example, having snacks in your day is really good. For some people, 3 good solid meals in a day works for them. So if it's working for you, it's okay. But if there is some adverse effect, there needs to be investigation.
Right. So that's okay. That's the inflammation. And I also understood, someone told me that overeating is the cause of disease.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So that means that like whatever you're not digesting or whatever is hard to digest is kind of staying in your body. Like I think I saw, for some reason I might have said like overeating or something to my while my Alexa was on or something, and now I get all these like Facebook Facebook advertisements of like cleaning out your colon and things like that. Like,
right.
Is that something we should be looking into, like all the stuff that's stuck in there, or I mean, I don't know if that's exactly nutrition, but the fact of overeating causes disease. What do you think about that?
Yeah, I think if we're pushing our digestive systems but beyond their capabilities, it's definitely problematic. You like to do yagyas, so I'll give you an example that you can relate to. But if you have a fire that's burning and you're going to take all the grain you've allocated and dump it onto the fire, what's going to happen to the fire? It's going to burn out.
Yes.
A way of mindfully eating, first of all, is in the preparation. I like for the entire family, for example, if you're a family or yourself, to get involved in the process, because digestion actually begins when you start preparing the meal, not when you start eating the meal.
Wow.
That is, our body has this internal cue that, hey, we're washing vegetables or handling fruit. Our touch sensors have the ability to say that food is coming. Prepare your stomach. Let's ignite that fire and get it ready to digest. And this is the problem with fast food and takeout and processed food, is that we're not involved in that process. So our body doesn't know how to digest that because we haven't activated that fire.
It's a whole like mental thing, like like you're saying, washing the vegetables and doing you're preparing your mind, your brain is preparing the body for like, okay, the end of this is going to be that I'm going to be consuming this.
Right. It's a meditation.
It's a
really
meditation. Right. That's really interesting. Because and yeah, I mean, fast food, like that whole part is cut out. It's just there. I mean, we don't eat fast food as devotees. I mean, that whole thing is not really relatable to us. But even like a vegan restaurant or something like that, even that's like, you're cutting out that part of it, and that's really important for digesting and for I mean, I didn't even think of that. That's a good
I
point.
mean, even if we're, for example, picking something up, a very trendy topic right now amongst devotees is like refined soy, the fake meats.
Oh, fake meat. Right.
It's not good for you, man.
Nutrella. I like Nutrella. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I know it's not good for me. I don't eat it that often, but I do enjoy it.
Yeah.
And
So
yeah,
this is the distinction we're making, though, right? If 90% of our diet is clean, then that 10% isn't going to affect us that much. But if that ratio is opposite and we're having more refined foods and we're not really planned forward and focusing on the foods that we can digest, for example, then this is where the problem lies. And this is where, it's okay. Like, don't feel guilty about every single meal. Enjoy yourself, celebrate. On my page, for example, I used to be so scared of frying food that
oh right.
people are going to judge me that I'm a
Yes.
nutritionist. But it's the truth. 4 to 5 times a year, I love to bust out the oil and
Yeah.
fry something wonderful and beautiful and
Yeah.
really enjoy it. And it's also a way for me to pass on this culture and tradition to my daughter that,
Right.
so much of, the things that I loved to eat when I was growing up was fried. It's not all the time,
Yeah.
but we should be able to, offer this beautiful meal, to the Lordship and know that Krishna is going to enjoy it, and also know that the devotees are going to enjoy it.
Yeah.
But
Yeah. That's a great point.
it's not for every day.
Yeah. I mean, I remember my dad when I was younger, like he would he would take like a pakora or something, put a napkin and like squeeze it and get all the oil out before he ate it. And it's like and that kind of like set it up like, okay, fried foods are bad. Like, although they're so tasty, but they're so bad for you and you shouldn't be eating them. But from what you're saying, that few times a year it's fine. And also passing on that to your children, it's like that's really invaluable. I mean, like, we don't want this tradition to stop. We want it to continue, but we want to do it in a more responsible way, right?
Right. Yeah, it's something it's very aggravating to my mother. My mom, I think she's been woke about health way longer than anybody else is. So when in the 80s and 90s, she used to work at a health food store doing
Oh,
menu
really?
planning. This is where this all came from, actually, is my grandmother, who did most of the cooking, was mostly Gujarati based, and dar bhat shak rotli was on the table every night.
Right.
But my mom loves to bake, and she experimented in the house, and anytime she asked for pizza, we got pizza, to the point where we'd be like, no more pizza.
Oh my gosh. Wow.
Like, my sister still talks about this. Like, anytime you ask my mom what she wants to eat, she'll say, oh, I want something tasty and flavorful, but she 100% means pizza.
That's awesome.
And so we had a very diverse experience growing up, in that I had the foundational Indian cooking that was very deeply ingrained, and it oftentimes was cooked in a very Gujarati fashion because that's how my grandmother cooked. But my mom was the one who was like, hey, this is quinoa and we should definitely eat this. And we were all like totally ragging on it. And when I was in nutrition school, I would call her up and be like, oh, I heard about this thing and it's amazing and we should be eating more kale. And she's like, well, what about, when I was saying this like 20 years ago? And
moms know the best.
Moms know the best.
Yeah.
I've luckily graduated to that, so I can say that myself too. But,
Right.
Yeah, it's always a funny thing in our home because, I'll visit home or whatever, and my dad will say something in Gujarati, and it's "Aaj kai saru banao," which means he wants oil in something. Like, let's fry something. Let's enjoy ourselves.
Let's enjoy,
not just like, So we should enjoy what we're eating, but we should also learn to enjoy the healthy stuff too. Like, if it's healthy and it's not tasting good, you're probably doing it wrong. Use spices, really challenge yourself. There is so much availability of ingredients and really good flavorful things that we can use to help develop flavors that we really enjoy. And again, like based off of our own tastes, everybody can find something healthy that they can enjoy.
Right. I also want to talk a little bit what you said about earlier about absorbing food that the quality may not be so good, so the nutritional content of it is not fully absorbed. So I always had this question. I've been talking to my friends about this, my doctor friends as well, about vitamins, like taking supplements and things. So do you think it's necessary? And if like, what are some signs where someone should be like, maybe I should think about this because I feel a certain way?
I think everyone needs to take supplements.
Really?
Yes.
That's a huge statement to make.
Yeah,
I don't take
actually
supplements at
only
all.
recently started
Okay.
showing myself take supplements on social media to help encourage people, I guess, break the stigma, because I think when people think of supplements, they think of medicine. And
Okay.
that's not true. I really think that, first of all, the way that farming practices, especially in North America, have been going over the last 100 years, there isn't much integrity left in our soil. Our soil is where we get the vitamins and minerals that we need to survive.
Yeah.
A lot of that has been essentially raped. The nutrients are gone from the soil. And the foods that we are eating, we can't uptake everything we need to, have a healthy life. So supplementation shouldn't be seen as medicine, but rather preventative health care. I really believe that everybody should be taking a good multivitamin and multimineral. People should be looking at if first we should assess what we need, not just to arbitrarily start taking vitamins. Everybody needs something different. I encourage you to ask your doctor for a full blood panel at least once a year. I know this is difficult in some places because healthcare isn't covered. In Canada, we have the opportunity to go and ask for all of these tests and see what we're deficient in. One of the major deficiencies that's actually showing up is zinc. And, who would have thought that zinc is such a big deficiency?
I mean, we have a lot of vegetables that have zinc that
absolutely. So what's the problem here? Why aren't we uptaking this? But what it is that first there's a buzzword that I'm going to put out here, the bioavailability of what we're able to uptake from our vegetables and kind of what is in a vitamin. Vitamins aren't all created equal. We should look at the quality of vitamins also.
Yeah.
But taking a good quality vitamin, I think, is essential.
What would be, because my experience was like when I was living in Vrindavan, I was feeling really lethargic, and I was feeling kind of tired and off. And I told my sister, and my sister sent me vitamins. She sent me like B12, and she sent me like rose hips or something like that. I started taking those, and I was like a new person. I was like jumping around all over the place, and I was like, this is like night and day. So now, after it's been like 10 years since, and I think I'm also starting to feel lethargic because I sit all day for work and things like that. So I'm thinking,
staring at a screen.
Yeah, maybe it's time now that I have to think about taking. And my friends have been telling me to get my blood work done to see what I'm deficient in or if some issue is there. But yeah, it's something I need to look in. What would you say is a good what attributes should be looking into vitamins that are, you said don't arbitrarily just start taking vitamins. Like, what should you look for essentially?
I think that you should look for vitamins that are whole food based. not
Okay.
the mineral or vitamin extracted from the food, but it should also have something to pair itself with. The bioavailability is really important. A lot of vitamins and minerals need to be kind of prepared in a certain way, so to speak. Taking a vitamin is like having, good food combining, for example.
Right.
There are some really great brands, Living Alchemy, for example. Organic is definitely best.
Mhm.
And I think that's something that you can swallow. I think a lot of people get deterred from like these big multivitamins that,
Yeah,
they
they're
try
like
to take for
massive.
7-8 days and they're this big. And
Right.
um, but we're also not going to find something that works for us on the first try. You
Right.
need to try a couple different brands, also see how you're digesting it, see how you feel. Just like any other food, you need to investigate
Yeah.
and see what works for you.
That seems to be the theme that you need. Like from the questions I've been asking you, a lot of the answers are starting with like whatever feels right.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think as our bodies change, this can also change too. What worked for me may not be the same thing that works for me 5 years from now.
Right. So you need to be kind of really in tune with like how you're feeling to kind of determine what steps you need to take to make things better.
Right. This is something I didn't really grow up with, that I wasn't really attuned to this, that
Yeah.
like, it's not until you start assessing the symptoms. And this is a practice that I do with my daughter when she could be pretending or playing. She loves to play doctor, for example. So I ask her, if she says things like, "Oh, my leg is haunted and my knee is grumpy." And so then we go through the process. "Oh, well, what is your knee feeling? What is your
Right.
stomach feeling like? What are the symptoms?" So now when she comes back to me, she can say, "My stomach is feeling not good. It's feeling bubbly. I can tell, okay, she's bloated. What's the
Mm,
actionable steps we're going to take for a child not to feel that?"
yeah.
And that's what we need to start doing for ourselves is, I'm feeling sick. What are my symptoms? Because based off of the symptoms, we need to be able to go to the root cause and address that root cause.
That's an important point. I think we live such fast lives that sometimes we forget to even like be conscious of our bodies and what our bodies are telling us. I speak for myself, it's just like things are so busy. Sometimes you just want to get into routine. Okay, in the morning, I just have my cereal. In the midday, I just have this. And at night, when I'm feeling snacking, I want to snack on something, something probably not so healthy or something fried or something. But the reality, is that you have to hear what your body is saying to you, and I think that's so important. I never do that. And like you said, we didn't grow up being like that.
Right.
It's just a difficult thing, and I think it's like something that you need to train yourself to
Yeah,
do
we
that.
need to learn. We need to learn to really assess what we need, because we are our own healthcare practitioners. Only we know what we're experiencing. Definitely blood tests and things like that are very helpful in helping to identify what the problem is, but only we can help fix that. Our bodies, we're really built to heal ourselves. It's
Yeah.
just how we're nourishing ourselves. And even within a family, we can't all eat the same kinds of foods sometimes. And I think that can become difficult, that we all need to, I think, adjust for each other and find some
Mhm.
happy medium.
Tell us a little bit about your Instagram page, because I know you put a lot of time and effort into, creating the content. And what's your motivation behind it? Because to do something that takes a lot of effort, you need to have a certain motivation and a certain like, what do you want to share with people? Tell us a little bit about that.
I started Made by Manjari in 2010, I think.
Wow, that's a while ago.
I've been cooking for a very long time. My mom was actually very open to us not just learning. Actually, I have two women gurus in my family that really helped develop this passion. The first was my grandmother. She had a very old school style. Have to learn how to cook. What will your mother-in-law think if you don't know how to roll a proper rotli?
Circle.
Very sort of, and so I have all of that training.
Yeah.
It's not for me, I don't really care what Anirudh thinks about my rotlis, but what my mom actually gave to me was this, and my dad, I don't really give him enough credit, but this opportunity to create and make mistakes, and oh boy, there was a lot of mistakes, but I was given kind of this like free will to create from a very young age, like even 8 or 9 years old. I remember just being able to bake. My mom has this black recipe book she's been writing in for as long as I've been alive.
Wow.
And to just pick something out of there, and if it worked, it worked, and if it didn't, it was okay.
Yeah.
So what really helped me spring into this idea of sharing was when my grandmother passed away. So she passed away, and there was so much that I felt that I probably just took for granted and didn't note down or dictate or learn from her, that, what if my mom didn't know about this, and it would have just passed away with her.
Yeah.
And so much of health and nutrition in that sense is lost as the generations go by, because we're not dictating what our ancestors are teaching us. And so initially I started this page for myself to make these things, and just kind of, it was like a little library for me to remember and capture a little picture of, okay, I made this sabji and it turned out right. And it wasn't about a recipe, and it definitely wasn't about what Made by Manjari has turned into now. And as the years kind of went on, I took a little break when my daughter Vidyavadu was born, because I had horrible postpartum depression. And it kind of, I had a C-section, and it was not the birth that I expected. For people who don't know what a C-section experience is like, if you see that picture of Nrsingadev ripping open Hiranyakashipu, that's it. It was bad, and I suffered from a lot of trauma as a result. And the way that I figured out that I needed to get back to my normal, or what I needed to feel whole again, was to cook. And so I started a 100-day project, which is very trendy amongst our youth.
I think we all started the 100-day projects. I mean, I've started a few, never finished them.
Yeah, so I started this 100-day project, and it was called the 100 Days of Nurture. And it was every day I would cook on Instagram and post a photo of what I made for dinner.
Oh, right.
And I had a 1-year-old daughter, and sometimes it would take me the entire day, but I was going to take this opportunity to just nurture myself and be able to cook this food, offer this, this meal, and enjoy it, because that's what it was going to take to get me out of my depression.
Right.
And it just turned out that there were so many women who were experiencing the exact same thing.
Yeah.
And that's kind of where the tutorial was born from, because I learned to cook, as I mentioned earlier, by viewing. And, you can read a recipe, but to be able to apply it and successfully understand the technique that it takes to apply the recipe, it takes a certain kind of talent. And I think that's why a lot of people don't really love recipe books. But when you see a person intuitively cooking and talking about technique and, understanding why so many women don't need these recipes because they understand fractions, they understand food science, they know how to layer spices. If I could just show people how to do that, they can naturally become great chefs themselves. So what Made by Manjari has turned into is education. And I feel really proud of that I can pass on this ancestral knowledge that, I feel every boy, girl, man, woman, whatever gender you identify with, everybody should know how to nourish themselves.
Yeah, that's great. I especially like the fact that you show exactly what's, you put this in and throw this in, and it's like the whole process is documented, and it's going to be there forever. I mean, as long as the internet's there, it's going to be, there in your archives or in your stories and stuff. So yeah, thank you for doing that. I mean, I love the fact that you preserve tradition, but at the same time you put your own spin on it, and you put using certain other ingredients that may not have been used in the past, and things. I think that's really valuable, because I'm a person who likes tradition, and I like preserving tradition, and I like passing. I'd love to pass things on, and you're doing that, and that's fantastic. What are your favorite, what are your go-to foods, for each, for breakfast, for lunch, for dinner, like you personally, or for your family? Because I'd like to hear what's healthy, like a nutritionist kind of thing. What do you guys eat? Nutritionist, what do they eat?
It changes a lot. I go through
really?
tons of phases of experimentation. When we moved into this place, when I was pregnant, actually, I went through this huge phase of waffles. Like, if there was any recipe, I tried to turn it into a waffle, to the point where I've broken 2 or 3 waffle machines.
Wow.
So we went through a lot of aloo paratha waffles, hash brown waffles, every kind of waffle, bhajia waffles. So we had a big waffle phase. I'm kind of coming back into oatmeal now.
Okay.
But breakfast, we practice intermittent fasting here. Not my daughter, but my husband and I.
Okay.
And so we don't eat after 7:00, and we break fast at 11:00. So it gives our body an opportunity to rest and heal whatever it needs to heal. I find that it really helps with any kind of digestive upset. It really helps to curb the late night eating.
Yeah.
So, and I know a lot of people struggle with that. That it's 9:00. Well, we can drink tea and water.
Okay, yeah. I like that. I like the idea of giving your digestion a break. I mean, that's one reason of Ekadashi as well, right?
Yeah.
You guys follow Ekadashi, but I see that you also cook elaborate things.
Yeah, it's kind of, I mean, especially within our little friend group community, before COVID, our home is always open on Ekadashi. Anybody who wants to come over and eat can come over and eat.
That's so cool. I like that.
That's actually for me, because I hate fasting. I'm gonna whisper that because I don't want to get judged. But I find it to be, I think it's probably something I've struggled with since childhood, but I hate when somebody tells me what I have to do. And now you're telling me I can't have grains and beans and all the things that I love. And suddenly it's a day that you're really craving toast. But by creating some kind of celebration out of Ekadashi and allowing my kin to come over and for us to enjoy this beautiful meal and fast together is awesome. And it's such a great way to celebrate Ekadashi. So, and what an awesome opportunity to add extra vegetables and things to your meals that you're not typically having all the time.
Yeah. So breakfast, you said you intermittent fasting sometimes, so you don't eat until 11. So then you eat at 11?
Yeah, so we break our fast with lunch. So we have a pretty good, that's our biggest meal of the day.
Yeah.
and then dinner. You have an opportunity to see every day usually what I make for dinner. We eat pretty simply, other than every Thursday, which is Thali Thursday, and that's when I do the full traditional, typically Gujarati meal. So,
For lunch?
yeah, I'll make it in time for lunch, and then
Wow,
whatever we need
super.
to supplement with.
Holly Thursday. I like
Yeah.
that. What else was I gonna ask you about your dinner is before 7, but it's like something lighter.
Yeah. So we eat dinner as a family. I think
Mhm.
that's also very important.
Sure,
I know
sure, yeah.
people with young children, they like to feed the children first and then eat, but
Yeah.
we actually teach our children a lot by eating together.
Right.
And so that is important, mindfully eating, and being able to pass along good eating habits, allowing our children to see, and our family to see, that I'm having the same thing that you're having, and some kind of camaraderie of kind of breaking bread together and being together. So I think that's really important.
Right.
But it's typically had a bit earlier than traditionally. I think a lot of people have dinner, but we usually eat dinner around 5:30.
Yeah.
Um,
Okay, 5:30. Okay, that's good. That's early. That's so you have time to
digest.
digest. That's very important. I got to think about that. Let's look at the questions. There's a lot of discussion going on in the comment section, a lot of appreciation. Let's look at some of these questions first. Okay, Krishna Prana asks, other than your mother and grandmother, what are some of your biggest cooking inspirations these days? Also, what do you think would be the most helpful steps in getting the Sunday feast back to that breaking bread sort of experience that you described? Great question.
First of all, it's Krishna Prana's birthday today, so happy birthday,
happy
Krishna
birthday.
Prana. Krishna Prana is my good friend, and yeah, I think getting back to this idea of really enjoying Sunday love feast is, first of all, service with a smile. It really makes a difference.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the prasad can be mindfully prepared in a way that, this is actually a very difficult question. I think because often the grains and things like that, there's a very standard sort of plate that I think most temples have in mind. I think where we can really adjust is our cooking method, not overcooking food, learning how to use a little bit less oil. Let's drop refined sugar and refined fats, and really, even if it means taking it down to a simpler meal, there's still a way to create a feast out of that. And focus on plant forward foods, focus on that diversity of, if this is an opportunity for us to showcase what good Krishna conscious sattvic food looks like, and for a person to take that practice home, then we need to first look at the integrity of the vegetables, but also integrity in the cooking practice. I think a really great way for all of us to adjust that is to actually get involved. Help do the service. Go cut vegetables if you need to cut vegetables. If you're donating, grains and all of that are always really helpful. I think a lot of people who donate want to donate grains, but also, if we start donating nice quality vegetables, then naturally the nice quality vegetables will start showing up in the Sunday feast. So I think it goes hand in hand.
Yes, good point. And she also said about your biggest cooking inspirations other than your mother and grandmother.
Mother Yamuna, for sure. Right. I think if anybody wants to learn really good foundational cooking skills, especially like mindful and meditative Krishna conscious cooking, her books are amazing. And they're one of my first experiences of cookbooks that I really loved.
Another point I wanted to bring up about the Sunday feast is that the way we serve it out, I think, is really important also. This whole thing that started I don't know if it was recently. I mean, my whole life, practically like for the past 20 years or so, I remember now,
Yeah,
you
everything
queue
in
up.
our life is recent, I think, compared to a lot of people.
Right. Like you queue up or you line up to the servers and they put it on your plate and everyone, that's like a very efficient way to do it. But what happened to people sitting in lines and people coming with the thing and serving it, nice while you're sitting? We don't do that anymore around here from where I'm
It
from.
actually happens at Vancouver Temple.
That's wonderful. I like that. I'm glad to hear that.
I think there's pros and cons of both sides. I think when you're lining up in a queue, you have an opportunity to say that, like, my body can only handle a small scoop of prasad, so
Right.
please. Oftentimes, when people are sitting in a line, the person who's serving is already looking at the next three people,
Right.
and you can't really control what's going on there. But yeah, either way, I think that both can be done in a really nice way.
Yeah.
I think that if we keep in mind that it's not about getting the prasad out in time or
Yes.
kind
Yes.
of the speed.
Efficiency. Yeah.
Yes, efficiency is fine, but then we're losing the quality of the
Yes.
experience.
Amazing. That's
So
true.
that totally ties into nutrition, because if you're feeling good while you're eating, naturally your body is going to do good things. Like, it really does go hand in hand. But if we're gonna lose the hospitality part of this, then the prasad experience is really lacking.
Yeah. Great point. Let's look at another question here. Nitai Ram, our friend Nitai Ram. Haribo Prabhu. Very interesting conversation. I love your podcast, Namas. Thank you. I appreciate that. Hey, Manjari, for those of us with limited cooking skills, what's one meal that you would recommend the most, excluding khichdi?
I was
I've got
totally gonna
down
say
pretty
khichdi.
well. Khichdi is like the go-to for.
It's the go-to.
Yeah.
I mean, if people aren't on board for khichdi, I'm just gonna give a nod to khichdi. It is a complete meal. It's a complete protein. You can add any kind of vegetable. It's easy to digest. If you're feeling sick, think khichdi. If not, I think a very good thing for a person who has limited cooking skills is some kind of cooked salad. It's typically raw vegetables is a little bit hard for most people to digest
Right.
if their digestive fire isn't at their highest. But cooking some vegetables, pairing it with a nice grain, a nice dressing, maybe seed-based tahini, for example, is a really great way to build a base of a dressing. It allows you to stir frying vegetables, for example, is a really great way to preserve the nutrient level, but still having cooked vegetables that can that are easy to digest. So I think some kind of cooked.
Stir frying, and what was the other one?
Like steaming or stir frying, I think, is a really good. Yeah.
I remember one devotee that I was in the ashram with. He would like steam vegetables, and then he'd have like different sauces like to put on. Like if you had broccoli, then steamed broccoli, but then you put like a nice really tahini on it or something, and that makes it really simple, but it's tasty at the same time.
Right.
So that's
I think chutney doesn't get enough credit, but
chutney,
adding a lot of herbs and to a nice good chutney and pairing it on the side is a really good way to get some nice fresh sort of nutrients in, and also it pairs well with almost anything. So also chutney. Yeah.
Chutney. Very enjoyable program. What's your take on the use of soya products? We could kind of discuss that a little. And what about low carb, healthy fats, LCHF?
Yeah. Okay. Not all soy is created equal. So I think that the less refining that you're thinking about, the better. The more and more refined the soy gets, the less and less beneficial it is for you. So Think plain tofu, edamame, tempeh, which is fermented tofu, is actually quite good for the health, but
Right.
again, to the strength of your digestion. I don't think it's something you should be consuming every day, but
Yeah.
it can. I think that and it's also soy is a complete protein. So that's something we can also think about.
And the second part of the question, LCHF, I'm not familiar with that.
I don't know what this acronym is either, but I'm not super into the whole, personally, as a nutritionist, the low carb. We need carbs. We just
Yeah.
need to choose our carbohydrates better. Oftentimes, things that are marketed as low carb are actually quite refined. And so we're negating sort of the health benefits of having less calories, for example. To speak to calories, I think unless you're having some very extreme health issues, we need to move away from counting calories and cutting carbs and that kind of thing. If we can move towards having more of a whole foods focused diet, I don't think we need to count calories.
Very interesting. So like this, the principle should be stay away from processed carbs.
What was the quotes? Leave the foods that man made, eat the foods that God made.
Right.
It's when we're grocery shopping, if we can, when you're looking at something that looks tasty and you turn around and you look at the ingredients,
And there's like
again, if you
tons of
can't
things.
recognize them, if there's
Right.
tons of them, if the first ingredient is sugar or oil,
Yikes.
it's not a good start.
Right.
I mean, unless you're buying sugar or oil. Like,
Right. This is a really interesting question. So, how is it starting our diet process and preparing the food compatible with not enjoying before Krishna is offered the boga? Good question.
that's
Interesting
a really
question.
good question.
Yeah.
I used to get so chastised when I was younger when I would say, "Oh, that smells good," but we can't turn our noses off.
Right.
Like it happens, right? We're
Yeah.
washing vegetables and it's happening. And this is a process our body has it's been created by Krishna, right?
Mm,
If our digestion is starting because we're preparing food, it's because Krishna wants us to prepare food for him. I think it all goes together. It's a sister science, essentially, that if we're preparing prasad for Krishna, he enjoys it and we can enjoy it. We can enjoy it together.
mm,
So I think that there's a lot of, especially for my generation, this kind of slapping the hands of,
right.
I think that's, yeah, I think that there's a lot of, you can't help but smell spices being activated. Like it's such an important part of cooking that, a proper tempering of your spices, for example, it's going to smell. People are going to experience the aroma. It's also preparing our home. And so many spices, actually, when we temper them in oil or we're activating them, they actually cleanse our homes. It's preparing our homes for a sattvic environment.
Right. Very, very interesting. Okay. Can you talk about eating raw foods only to optimize nutrition? I know it's not Ayurvedic, but it's been recommended to me by a vegan nutritionist as a way to reset the body, reduce inflammation, etc. So,
Yeah,
raw food.
I think that raw foods actually they have some, I think short-term benefits for detoxification, for example, especially reducing certain types of inflammation in the body. I do recommend having some raw foods, typically away from cooked food. So have your raw foods and your cooked foods separated from each other. So many cuisines, for example, already do this. Salad is typically an appetizer. We wait a little while, then our entree comes, and
Yeah.
we have the cooked food entree. So this is also a very intuitive thing. Usually, people eat their salads first and not their salads last. I think for a short time to serve the purpose that it needs to, it could be very beneficial.
Yeah, I mean, I hear a lot about people eating raw foods, but then like if you eat too much greens or something, you can get kidney stones or something like that. I don't know. That's what I saw someone, if you, because it's such a, maybe a large amount of raw greens is not that, I guess everything in moderation, it should be
Right.
moderated.
Also, this whole idea of dieting, for example, a lot of the diets that are created, not lifestyle based ones, but things that are made, they're made to be temporary. If you're doing something to fix a symptom or a
Oh,
health
right.
related thing, then you would come to some back to either some kind of normalcy or adjust your body. So
Right.
I think oftentimes when people receive this information, they think that they have to live this kind of life forever,
Hmm.
and it's not necessarily true.
That's a really good point. Yeah. So normalcy should be is where you should focus on, like
Right.
what you're always going to be doing.
And everybody's going to have a different normal, and your
Yes.
normal is it's very difficult with health because it's always going to change. Your
Yeah.
environment can change, your body can change, but what you notice is that you'll have a very consistent sort of set of foods that you will be very compatible with your body, and in time you can learn what that is.
Yeah. Wow. Okay. How about supplements that claim they're natural and made from vegetables? How effective are they if the vegetables to start with aren't so great?
Yes. So this word natural in North America, that word is not regulated. You can call fruit juice from concentrate, for example, natural,
Mm,
but that process isn't exactly natural. When you're picking vitamins, I really highly suggest looking for a whole food type of vitamin that is organic. So I think that'll weed out a lot of the stuff that is labeled natural that might have a lot of additives.
so the key words are whole food, like it's derived from whole
Yeah,
foods,
whole food and organic.
whole
Yeah.
food. Yeah, not to be mixed with with the brand or of the store Whole Foods, but whole food.
Yes.
Right.
Yes. Not to be.
Okay. What about temple residents who don't have a choice in what to eat? They cannot tailor a diet to their physical needs. They just have to take whatever's cooked, which is not always very healthy. Looks like we lost Manjari for a minute. Oh, she's back.
I'm back.
Okay, you're back. Uh, we touched on this about temple devotees not being able to choose. They just have to take whatever's cooked. So I mean, what I derived from
I
what you said was that the temple themselves should start cooking more healthy.
Right. I also think as a temple, we need to take responsibility for taking care of our full time devotees
Right.
because without them, we can't thrive. And we should consider the prasad that we're serving these devotees as preventative health. Because if the prasad they're eating is actually making them sick, then we're not serving the purpose that we're meant to serve.
Yeah. Yeah. Will Manjari make a cookbook? Good question.
It's probably the most asked question. It's definitely a goal of mine. Yes, but not anytime soon.
Okay.
Yeah.
You've been talking a lot about checking in your body, how it feels, and go from there when it comes to nutrition. What do you think about eat when you're hungry and do not eat when you are not hungry rather than eating on schedule? That's a good question.
I think that eating on a schedule works for a very particular type of body type. For example, certain people really thrive. I'm one of those people. I really thrive from a very set, regimented. I know
Mm,
exactly when my food is coming to me.
right.
Not all people are like that. My husband, for example, he likes to eat when he feels like eating, and so
Right.
we adjust to that. I think this is a very intuitive thing for what works for you. We've been kind of marketed that we need to have breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and that is the basis and the flat line that everybody needs to do. But um, just like how everybody conducts and has a different you could work night shift, for example. You may need to fuel yourself at night. So based on your lifestyle, you can create something. I wouldn't suggest, though, skipping meals, for example, is, because of lifestyle. I think that can also be problematic. So eating when your intuition calls you to, I think, is awesome, within reason.
I tend to have a lot of space personally between meals, just because of like work and things like that. And I think in Ayurvedic, I remember an Ayurvedic doctor told me that it's like your digestion is going, but you're not giving it anything. So it's like burning, like your liver is burning or something.
Your organs can start to go into a little bit of overdrive, because if your body isn't used to receiving food at kind of not always a set time, but when it feels like it needs to be nourished, it's going to start using its own resources to keep you going. And I think that's the problematic part, is that we want to be fueling our body, not using the fuel that, that's it's called survival mode. Your body switches into survival mode and starts using the resources from your body to fuel yourself. But really, you could stop. If it means having a snack, help curb that. It's also going to help with, we typically get emotional or a little bit angry when we're hungry, and we need to be able to identify that it's actually time for me to fuel myself.
Right. Yeah, it's very true. Opinion on air fryers, please.
I have one. I've had one for a long time. They're not going to replace deep frying. I think a lot of people have this misconception that you can throw like a wet pakora batter in there and it's going to act the same way. It's not going to work. And I have tried so many different things in an air fryer.
Yeah.
For me, I think that if you're a foodie like myself, it's a nice machine to have. If you feel like there is a lot of foods in your diet that are fried, it's a good alternative to have. But I think it's another appliance. It's a trendy sort of thing. I would say for most people, I'm not going to recommend it.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah.
But along the same lines of like that kind of appliance, you do use a what's that thing called? Everyone
Instant
uses
pot.
it. What's that?
Instant pot?
Instant pot. Yeah. You like instant pots.
I like Instant Pot. I was pretty anti pressure cooker.
Yes.
Up until the point where I became a mom and being efficient had to become a priority. So there's a little give and take when it comes to health. Do I prefer making dal on a stove? Yes, for sure.
Yeah.
Do I have time for it now? Not so much. The Instant Pot, for example, I think it's a very good piece of technology. And it's not a pressure cooker, for example. It's one kind of pressure. It often overcooks food. With the Instant Pot, there's still an element of that, but you can really control the heat and your cook level and your pressure. So you're not really losing a lot of the nutrients that traditional pressure cooking is doing. So that took me a lot of research and a lot of trying of different appliances. But personally speaking, I would say Instant Pot is a buy. Yeah.
Yeah. Pressure cookers are such a part of like Indian kids.
Yeah.
It's like hearing that
whistle sound is so ingrained in my brain.
So, and it's like, first I was terrified of it for the first 5 years of my life, and then it became like, okay, I can kind of get close to it, but then I also have like relatives that like have got their eyes messed up because that blew up in their face and stuff weird. Anyway, pressure cookers are dangerous at times. So be
I
careful with
think
those.
it's a quintessential part of the South Asian child experience.
Yes, definitely.
Everybody should experience it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love this is such a good good example of food nostalgia is when the pressure cooker whistle goes, you know that there's a dal in there. And, again, the digestion is starting.
Yeah.
It's
My mom's like,
revving.
yeah, my mom's like, was that the second one or was that
Yeah, was that
the
the third
first
one?
Yeah. I love that. Please suggest some foods that are more filling, which are not loaded with carbs, like pizza and pasta. Good question. So that's something interesting to note about foods that are filling, but at the same time are not loaded with carbs and going to make you feel bad, but things that will make you feel full.
So I think that if you implement this idea, actually a couple years ago in Canada, they actually did this. At the time, it was considered a very revolutionary thing because the Canadian food guide hadn't changed since it was created.
Oh, wow.
And it's not perfect, but I think that there are some elements of the food guide, if you want to Google that, the Canadian food guide, that you can implement. A way to stay fuller is a greater emphasis on fruits and vegetables and plant-based proteins. That's dal, that's quinoa, that's buckwheat. Amaranth is a really good example of a protein, which is also a grain.
How would you cook amaranth though? Because I've seen that in like cereals and stuff, but I haven't seen it in like a is that like you can cook it like a rice
It's a
or something?
grain. Yeah, you can cook it like a rice. You can get it in a flour form. You can make
Okay.
chapati out of it. You can add it to any kind of vegetable and steam it. I've made dokra out of it, for example.
Oh,
It's
interesting.
grains are very versatile. We can turn it into everything. Amaranth leaves of the plant are also edible. So there's so many ways to actually utilize plants in multiple different ways. I wouldn't just limit yourself to, having your foods in one way. But yeah, another thing is trying to eliminate sort of the traditional 4 groups of food, but rather focusing on vegetables and fruit in one section, whole grains in another, and protein. So if the other 50% of your meal could be whole grains and protein. Whole grain is really important because that's something that we're not, especially as South Asians, that we're not really accustomed to because we've been having the whitest basmati possible, or let's return back to sort of the ancestral grains that we think about that aren't really a part of our diets anymore. And there are a lot of grains available.
For example,
buckwheat is a really good example.
Yeah.
But also different types of rice. There's so many different types: red rice, black rice, brown rice. If your body can digest it, there's a lot of grain available. Quinoa is actually one of 2 fully complete plant-based proteins. So quinoa hits grain and protein, which is awesome. So I'm a big quinoa is a really great grain.
Quinoa just has like a stigma for me, just because it's like it's a Ekadashi and you're eating quinoa. So if I eat quinoa on like any other, like if someone gives it to me on any other day, I'm like, is today Ekadashi? Why are you doing
am I fasting?
Yeah.
My husband's the same way, and it's taken years, and I think it will continue to take years to break that stigma.
Yeah.
And I also, there's a lot of people who don't consume quinoa and ekadashi. Also, that's cool. Whatever. Whatever works for you. But I highly recommend. Oh boy, I just saw the next question.
This might be a little out of context, but what do you think about CBD to reduce stress?
I think that if you are working with a professional and you are addressing your stress from a dietary point of view, a physical activity point of view, addressing adrenal fatigue, having a good blood work panel and working with somebody who's worked with CBD before, I think it's a good option.
Yeah. For those of you who don't know, CBD is derived from either cannabis or what was the other thing? They make rope and stuff out of it. Anyways, it's
Hemp.
hemp. Yeah, hemp. So it's like a more natural kind of medicine.
Also, it's not going to get you high. There's a lot of stigma around that.
Right.
Hemp also, you should definitely have hemp in your diet. It's not going to get you high, but it's a really good source of protein. It's got a lot of omega-3 fatty acids. It's just built really well.
Right.
So,
and
yeah.
it does the CBD. There's a difference between CBD and THC. THC is what is what the high part is, but CBD is like the more medicinal.
That's correct. Yeah.
Nutritional part. So yeah, to answer that question, you do recommend people look into that.
Yeah, as long as you're working with somebody, I think it's
Right.
it's a good option for also preventing. It's a good preventative option.
Cool. Well, Manjari, thank you so much. This is a great conversation. I really enjoyed it. I really got a lot out of it. I think the theme was that I wrote down some notes. The themes were listen to your body, because everyone's body is different and everyone's body reacts differently. So to try to become more in tune of what your body is saying. Not all diets or ways of eating is one size fits all. Like it's really uniquely to your individual situation. And I think those are the two kind of takeaways I took away essentially from the conversation, that listen to your body, and also all diets are not the same. It's really case to case. Do you have any concluding statements?
I think that as devotees, we've already shifted towards mindful eating and we have pretty healthy practices. I think that just broadening our minds towards what health is, questioning our foods, the integrity of our food, really watching our sugar intake. I know a lot of devotees who think having diabetes is like a Brahmin flex. It's not. Like, have you heard this before?
No, I haven't.
If you have diabetes, you were a Brahmin in your last life.
Oh my god, that's horrible! I don't
like,
know anyone...
Where did you find this information?
Oh, gosh.
But
wow.
Yes, and we're passing along again. Like, this is extremely important knowledge that we're passing along, and for our next generation to come into having better eating habits, but also a better relationship with food and prasad is extremely important. And so if we can set that example, I think it'd be really wonderful.
Yeah, we need to set the example as the next generation for sure. Well, anyways, thank you. And thanks everyone for listening. Please, let's put Manjari's Instagram handle on the screen here, made by Manjari. Go to her Instagram and follow her. She puts out tons of great content, a lot of amazing stories and like cooking, throwing the spices in and how much, and then it's just fantastic. You put out really great content, and you put a lot of energy into it, like photographing it and putting cool cloth and backgrounds and things. I love it. Fantastic. So go ahead and follow her on Instagram, and you can connect with her on Facebook as well. And I know she's a big part of Kirtan Vancouver. Also check out Kirtan Vancouver. Big shout out to them and to her husband, Anirudh, who's a good dear friend of mine. Thank you for helping out with the with this interview. And also check out my Facebook page, YouTube page, and please share this, because this is like knowledge that can really help people and help collectively our devotees' health. So because health is really the first thing. I mean, I'm beginning to really realize that now, as getting to be a little bit older now, and it's like you really have to look after it. And I don't do that enough. And I know a lot of other people don't do it enough. So we really have to push on this kind of message that let's look after our health so we can, learn to serve each other and serve Krishna longer and better. And, it's important. So thank you, Manjari, for coming on and sharing your knowledge and your wisdom with us.
Thank you for having me. It's wonderful. Yeah. Thank you so much.
Stay on a little bit longer. I'm going to turn off the live, but thanks everyone for listening. That's episode 52 and the Late Morning Program podcast with Namras. Thank you everyone for listening.
Thank you so much. Bye.
Bye. Hare Krishna, Hare